Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Kit Derrick, an author based in northwest England in Liverpool, and the author of several books including Man in the Bath, as you can see behind me on the shelf. And at this stage I thought it's probably sensible for me to give you a little summary of the novels which I have published so far, which you can find in all good bookshops and all good libraries and via Amazon and on the Kindle. The first book I had published is Man in the Bath, which is a story of a university administrator, Dr. David Dunn, who espouses his philosophy while lying soaking in the tub, videoing himself from the waist up, and then putting this on the internet for all and sundry to follow his great wisdom. This was written back in the 1990s before the advent of influencers and social media, so I was quite pleased in a way when it came to pass. It's a dystopian novel, and as the cult of Man in the Bath grows, David gradually loses control of the message and of what's being said, and finds himself a pawn and a puppet of the monster that he's created. I won't give any spoilers as to what happens, but it does not end well for David. The second book, which I published, is called The Raven Sound, which is a pun on the Mersey Sound, the poetry magazine which came out in the 1960s. And this is it's difficult to explain. It is a time travel philosophical book, in the vein of It's a Wonderful Life or Christmas Carol. The main protagonist, Jack, who is a curmudgeonly and unpleasant drunk, is visited by two spirits who take him back first to the 1990s and then to the 1960s, where he sees what life is actually like, what he was like in the past, and what some of the people who came into his life became. Jack, as we discover his story, there's a real sadness there. He has no one to love. He stopped loving anyone when he was about 20 years old, and he discovers on the course of the book that his best friend Brian, from when he was a teenager and in the early 20s, is probably the only person he's ever loved, not his wife, not his daughter. And losing that bond probably led him down the path to pity and to the wreck of a man that he is when the novel opens. But there is the hope of absolution, in that there might be something that he does in the past, in the 1990s or the 1960s, that could change the lives of those he could have loved. The third book, which came out, is called Text Me, a brief encounter with a Nokia 3310. This is an old-fashioned love story and a play on Brief Encounter. It's a modern, well, I say modern, 2000 equivalent of Brief Encounter, where a married woman who is dissatisfied with her life meets up with an old flame from university, her first boyfriend, and they embark on an innocent, I suppose, affair by text message. And this is back in the days before emoticons, when you used to use colons and semicolons and brackets and needed to know what they meant. Over the course of the book, she comes to the conclusion that she needs to decide what she actually wants out of life, whether it is related to the men in her life, to her husband, to her best friend, to her ex, or whether she needs to have more confidence in herself and stop relying on other people, I suppose. I won't say too much more about that. I'll be honest, it's a difficult book if you're not familiar with the emoticons which were used at that time, so the emojis, prior to emojis, because some chapters are written entirely in them. But if you fancy a challenge, or you were around and used computer codes or texts in 2000, then that might be the book for you. Hope is a 6-letter word, which was my fourth novel, is a story of William Stark, who's lost both his parents, and he decides to travel around the country visiting all locations which are important to him from his past. On the course of his travels, he finds a girl climbs into his car at midnight and falls asleep in his arms without saying a word. And the next day he discovers, bumping into her again, that she only speaks French. She joins him for the remainder of his travels, and we get to see their relationship and how they communicate. The narrative also jumps to far later in Will's life, long after the girl has gone, but how the impact of a few days of one particular experience can stay with you and can influence your life for as long as you live. It's a particular favourite of mine. The next book, which is due out soon, or maybe out already, depending on when you're watching this, is called Lorelei, which is great fun for me to write, because it's based partly on a film that I made in university in the 1990s, or rather I started to make, and then for various reasons, about a third of the way through the film, it never got finished. But I did keep the footage, and I always remembered the story. So I always wanted to retell it, and I thought novel is the perfect form for it. This is the story of Trent, who's a photographer. He's a little paranoid, a little anxious, a little insecure. He's friends with Jay, the lead singer of a band, the Cop Liverpool band, who are about to make it big, and Jay's girlfriend, Suzanne. A couple of years before the opening of the novel, his girlfriend, Trent's girlfriend, passed away in a tragic accident in North Wales, and he's never really got over that. As the novel progresses, Trent starts to hear voices and see visions, sometimes of his dead girlfriend, sometimes of this mysterious female figure who seems to be tempting him to do things which he really shouldn't be doing. And he starts to obsess over Suzanne, over Jay's girlfriend as well. The voices and the nightmares get worse for him, and he reaches the stage where he isn't sure what's reality, whether there actually are spirits controlling him, or whether he's just losing his mind as a result of the death of his girlfriend. It's a horror novel, and I hope you'll enjoy it very much. So that's a brief oversight of my first 5 novels. There are other works available, which you can always check out on my website, www.kitderrick.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at KitDerrick1. So I hope you've enjoyed this little background into the novels that I've released so far, and there will be more films to follow. Thank you.